Joining us now to talk about this is Mary Trump. She is Donald Trump's niece and the author of the best-selling book, Too Much and Never Enough, How My Family Created the World's Most Dangerous Man. Mary, great to have you with us for your insights on this. So you're also a psychologist, which is very interesting because it tells us a little bit about what we saw over the weekend. Senator Cassidy said Republicans will not win again if they keep putting Donald Trump on a pedestal. Why do so many Republicans continue to adore someone who knocked them out of power?
Sadly, it's because he gives them permission to be their worst selves. He actively champions their white supremacy. And we need to be very clear about what that means. White supremacy is not some fringe thing that only the KKK and the Proud Boys embrace. This is becoming mainstream Republicanism at this point. And what we've seen is Senator Cassidy, is that generally speaking, most elected Republicans are either standing by Donald or staying silent and being complicit in their silence. So they're making the calculation that their best path going forward is to allow Donald to continue to be the leader of their party, which is something that should be very troubling for all of us.
You know, there's an interesting aspect and dynamic at play here because after the Capitol riot, you saw people like the former UN ambassador Nikki Haley coming out telling Politico's Tim Alberta this quote. She said he went down a path he shouldn't have, and we shouldn't have followed him, and we shouldn't have listened to him, and we can't let that ever happen again. Fast forward to yesterday, she tweets this out. Strong speech by President Trump about the winning policies of his administration and what the party needs to unite behind moving forward. The liberal media wants a GOP civil war. Not going to happen. What do you make of this? Is this Nikki Haley trying to make herself the heir apparent to the Trump mantle?
It may well be. I don't think she has a shot at that. And I think all Nikki Haley has done over the last 4 years is utterly disgraced herself and probably torpedoed any real future she has in politics. But a lot of other Republicans have followed the same trajectory. The problem is that the time to render Donald irrelevant was as soon as the election was called for President Biden. They didn't do that. They stood on the sidelines. They let him tell his big lie over and over again. Some of them repeated it with him. So by the time the insurrection happened, which of course Donald incited, and by the time the Senate trial happened, Donald had made it very clear to them that if they don't stay with him, he's going to start a third party, which would decimate the Republican Party and probably torpedo any chances they have of, winning any statewide or federal elections going forward. So they lost their chance, and here we are.
You know, as we noted in the beginning of this segment, it is tradition for former presidents to stay out of the limelight and avoid criticizing their successors, which has, in many ways in the past helped improve their image in the long term. Now, Donald Trump, he broke away with that tradition. Is he better served by staying in the spotlight or out of it, given the trouble that he faces?
I guess it depends on what that means. Donald isn't a strategic thinker, and he doesn't think in the long term. It's all about what works for him in the moment. And I think that the calculation he's making is that being somebody who continues to wield power in the party is going to shift focus away from his very, very serious legal problems and potentially criminal charges that he might be facing at the state level. So I think that's the game he's playing. Whether or not it's going to work for him is highly doubtful.
Let's look ahead for a moment. There are signs that Donald Trump may be starting to lose his grip on even the party's most diehard activists. He won just 55% of the vote in the CPAC straw poll. And while 95% say they want the GOP to keep advancing Trump's agenda, only about 68% say they want him to run again, something he teased. What does that suggest to you?
That suggests that he may well have overplayed his hand. I think those are the worst numbers we've seen for him. I know it's a very small sample size, but still, if we're talking about CPAC, those are the hardest core of his supporters. So I think the Republican Party may indeed use that as an excuse to start moving further away from him. But we're going to have to see. The Republican Party, again, has shown very little spine when it comes to separating themselves from Donald. And I think the reason is not because they're afraid of him, but because they represent him and they represent what they believe in.
Speaking of the Republican Party, its conservatives and spine, Ted Cruz said when he spoke at CPAC, said President Trump is not going anywhere, to the applause of the crowd. And then on Sunday said he didn't watch the president's speech. Do you believe him? Why do you think he would do that or say that?
I'm not entirely sure why Ted Cruz does anything. I think we would have been better off if he'd stayed in Cancun, quite honestly. But yeah, I think he's just, as usual, trying to play both sides and have it both ways. I think the last thing in the world Ted Cruz wants is for Donald to run again in 2024.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.